Today we're going to do more burning. I did a video last week about burning. I showed a couple different ways to light a slash pile. That ended up being a controversial video. From what I could see in the comments, most people could see what I was throwing down. But there were a few people who were taking things out of context. That video made some good fodder for those who like to nitpick in the comments. That was only one way to burn. Today we're going to do what I think is my favorite way to burn. In the process, I'm going to try to address some questions and comments that came up in the last video. I've heard this called swamper burning, but I've also heard some other things called swamper burning too that aren't even like this. So today we'll just call this piling as we burn. All of this slash has been out in the rain and snow for the last couple weeks. It is very wet. Over the thousands of piles I've burned over the years, I've found this to be probably the easiest way to burn wet slash. I start with some dry wood and kindling. I put a base down to keep things off the wet ground. Use whatever your favorite fire starting method is. I'm using some, I think, ponderosa pine fat wood today. Only takes a couple pieces. Use whatever your favorite fire starting technique is. As we can see, the heated air around the fire is directing everything upward, including the heat. From what I could see in the comments of my last video, most people could see that I was making a distinction between convective heat, which causes heat to rise, and radiant heat, which tends to radiate in all directions. But there were a few people who didn't pick up on that and found it an opportunity to nitpick in the comments. That's always fun. Now we'll take some of this wet slash and just put it right in the fire. Regardless of whether you believe it's the airflow that's drying the wood or whether it's the radiant heat that's drying the wood, the point here is the wood's going to dry and burn. Sometimes it's good to get the point of what's being said instead of trying to tear apart what's being said. This may be the slow way of getting a fire going. I know you can use accelerants like diesel. Some people use old tires and burn all kinds of things, but I've found this works well. To get wet slash burning, I like to use wood as a base because unlike diesel, it's going to burn long enough to dry out this saturated wood. And this isn't just drizzled on wood, this is saturated wet wood. The reason why this is going to work, and I know it's going to work because I've done thousands of these, is we're keeping the fuel really close to the fire and even in the fire. Unlike the pile where we lit it on the bottom, a lot of the fuel was way up here, and when it burned out that little hole, it can't get up to the fuel up here. But when we're piling as we're burning, we can keep that fuel close to the fire. It may look like I'm smothering the fire, but I'm not. Part of the key here is to make sure you always have enough fuel on here that's drying. If you don't have enough fuel on here, when the fire starts to take off, it can burn out that small amount of fuel. Then it'll die down before it has a chance to dry more fuel. That's the problem we had with that bottom lit fire. To those who suggested in the last video that it's not the radiant heat that dries the wood as much as it's the airflow, the heat is bringing the air up and there's more air coming in to replace it. They were saying that's what dries out the wood underneath. Check this out. I put this stick down low next to the fire. The stick was saturated with water. It's drying on this side. That's why it has this color change. On the side where the air should be flowing into the fire, it's not showing any sign of drying. Radiant heat on that side is drying it. Some of you who are arguing in the comments have some splaining to do here. I've done thousands of those top lit slash piles, and one of the things I have noticed over the years is the sides of the material that's facing the fire up above are the sides that are drying out first. The sides facing away from the fire are not drying as fast. That radiant heat that radiates in all directions is what dries the stuff underneath. That starts happening before it starts building coals on the ground. A lot of people were trying to tell me that what I was saying was happening in that video was not actually happening. Keep in mind when you make comments on a video, the person who's actually doing the thing, who's probably actually spending a couple hours doing the thing, they have an advantage of being able to see what's actually happening. The person who's watching a video that's condensed into just a few minutes, you're only seeing part of the story, you're at a disadvantage. That's just a good common sense thing to keep in mind before you feel the need to tell someone that what they're experiencing in their video is not actually what they're experiencing. And it's unfortunate that we even have a need to say things like that these days. And unfortunate some people let their fire start getting ahead of them because they feel the need to start ranting about things instead of tending to their fire. I can see all around this fire that the radiant heat is drying the wood more so than the airflow. We've got a hot enough fire now that we can start putting more material on it. Some people might make the comment that I just smothered the fire. The reason it's making all this visible smoke, water vapor, is because it's wet wood. It's okay, it's not smothering the fire. When we're dealing with extremely soggy material like this, it can take a little while to get the first fire going. But once we're at a point like this, we've got a good core of heat. Yes, I know the heat is rising through convection. Sometimes things need to be taken in context. This manzanita is one of the easiest materials there is to get burning when it's wet. But I intentionally mostly use Douglas fir and oak on this one because manzanita would be kind of cheating. Just to show that we can do it with other wood too. The first fire takes a while, but once we get a fire going, we can use this fire to start other fires and we can get them going more quickly. I don't know if we'll be able to do that in this video. The radar is showing that there's a wall of rain over here about to come this way. I actually like burning in the rain, but unfortunately my camera equipment is not such a big fan of that. So we may have to end this early. A couple guys in the comments said I clearly don't know what I'm doing when it comes to fire. They were saying that to the guy who says he prefers doing burning in the rain. I was hoping I was going to have at least enough time to come up with a full video building a respectable fire. One of the reasons I prefer burning in the rain, one, the rain keeps you cool. Burning can be a hot job. And when I'm done burning, I like to rake out the coals to retain the biochar. The rain helps to extinguish those, but that's for another video probably. Now we got a good hot core fire going. We can put anything on it. Doesn't matter how wet it is, doesn't matter if it starts raining. The fire is just going to go, as long as you keep putting fuel on it. That is how I like to get a fire going when everything's wet. All you need is just a little bit of dry material to get it going. This is probably obvious to a lot of people, but to some people it's not. Being able to build a fire in wet conditions could save your life. It's not a bad skill to know. And this radiant heat over here is very hot. It's uncomfortable. That radiant heat right next to the fire, it's coming from the fire, the coals are blocked. Almost seems like fire does produce radiant heat that radiates in all directions. That's the risk you make when you make obnoxious comments on my channel. I might make a little fun of you in a next video or two. It's childish, but I have a little fun with it. We got soggy wet wood that we're burning with a fire that's making hardly any smoke. All right, I have this little area cleaned up. To continue, I would need to build more fires over here. Once I have a hot fire going over there, I can use that fire to start fires over here. Then I can start one over there and keep going. The process of doing that goes much quicker than building the first fire. I'd like to show you how to do that, but I don't know if you can hear it on my hard hat, but it's starting to rain instead of sprinkle. So I'm gonna have to go. We'll do that on another video.